You sit here tonight, not because the world has made a place for you, but because you have been forced to carve one out of the shadows. All your life, you have been told, in ways subtle and crude, that the way your mind works is somehow wrong, or strange, or burdensome. And yet, if we strip away the voices of society, the glare of the collective, the endless comparisons, you will find that what they call a curse is, in truth, an ancient gift. I have seen it in the dreams of kings and in the quiet eyes of the forgotten. The intuitive introvert, the mind that turns inward toward the hidden fire, is not a defect in nature, it is nature's secret chamber. The inner sanctum where symbols breathe and archetypes awaken. The moment you close your eyes to the clamor of the outer world, you open them upon a far older one. In this world there is no clock, no marketplace noise, no constant demand to speak before you have understood. Here, thoughts do not march, they bloom. Here, meaning is not given, it is unearthed. But because this world is invisible to the majority, they fear it. They see you withdraw into your depths and they whisper, cold, distant, difficult. They do not know that you are holding counsel with dreams older than language. Many of you know this tension, to feel life most fully when you are alone, yet to live in a culture that treats solitude as an ailment, to see patterns long before they are visible to others, yet to be told you are imagining things, to sense the undercurrents beneath a person's words, to know their hidden motives, and then to be punished for naming them. It is a paradox of the intuitive. You walk with a lantern in a world that prefers the darkness because light exposes too much truth. The ancient mind understood this archetype well. In myths, it is the seer, the oracle, the sage on the mountain, who speaks in riddles, not because they wish to confuse, but because they are translating truths too vast for the ordinary tongue. Your inner life is such a mountain, but when the village cannot climb to your height, they will call your silence arrogance, your detachment coldness, your independence a flaw. And here lies the danger if you believe them. You will turn against your own source. You will trade your mountain for their marketplace, and your light will flicker. This is why I tell you, the so-called curse is not that you are different. The curse is believing that you must erase your difference to be accepted. The blessing is that your mind is tuned to a frequency that can hear the murmurs of the collective unconscious, the whispered symbols that rise from humanity's deepest roots. You are an antenna for meaning, and every time you sit quietly in a room, you are scanning an ocean most people cannot see. But let us speak of the cost, because every archetype has its shadow. The blessing of intuition carries with it the burden of isolation. To see deeply is to feel deeply. The INFJ and the INTJ know this. Vision comes at the price of peace. When your inner world is rich, the outer world often feels pale, sometimes unbearably so. And if you are not careful, you may withdraw so far that you begin to live entirely in the realm of symbols, forgetting that life must be lived as well as understood. Dreams and archetypes feed the soul, but it is the act of bringing them into the tangible world that fulfills the psyche's purpose. You see, The psyche is not content to know it, longs to become. The image in the dream must find its way into action, the insight into a bridge between people, the vision into a seed planted in the soil of the real. If you remain in the inner sanctum too long, your gift begins to consume itself. You will turn that penetrating vision upon yourself in endless analysis, and the inner blessing will feel like an inner prison. This is the moment when many intuitive introverts believe the lie that their mind is a curse. It is not the mind that is the curse, but the mind left without a path to express itself. There is a symbol. I often return to the alchemist's vessel. Within it, opposites are held together until they transform into something new. Your life is such a vessel. The heat of the outer world, the cool depths of the inner world, they must meet, interact, even clash. You are not meant to choose between them. You are meant to hold them both, to allow the friction of their meeting to generate the gold that neither world could produce alone. When you understand this, solitude becomes not escape, but preparation. You go inward, not to hide from the world, but to return with something the world did not have before you. This is the sacred rhythm of the intuitive descent and return. Immersion and offering, but if the descent is shamed, if the return is mocked, the rhythm is broken. And so many of you live half-lives, half in the outer world, trying to appear as others expect, and half in the inner world, nursing the wound of being unseen. I tell you tonight, the wound of being unseen is not yours to carry forever. It is a rite of passage, not a life sentence. Every intuitive introvert must walk through the valley where their gift is misnamed. In that valley, you will meet the shadow of your own archetype, the hermit who refuses the call, the prophet who buries their vision. And if you are brave enough to face this shadow, you will discover that the curse dissolves the moment you claim the truth of your perception without apology. For the INTJ, this often means accepting that your strategic, future-oriented vision is not cold calculation. It is a form of devotion to possibility. For the INFJ, it means realizing that your empathic insight is not weakness. It is the quiet force that shapes destinies. Both carry a blueprint for transformation, one through structure, the other through depth. The world will not hand you permission to live this way. You must grant it to yourself, and perhaps you ask, how can one live authentically with such a gift in a world that constantly misunderstands it? You must first stop seeking to be understood entirely. The world is not built to fully receive those who see beyond its current horizon. Your task is not to convince them of your view, but to embody it so fully that it becomes a living symbol. The intuitive introvert who lives their truth becomes a mirror in which others may at first see nothing or see only distortion, but with time they may see themselves more clearly. The difficulty is that you live in two worlds at once, and both demand your allegiance. The inner world demands your honesty, your courage to face the images that rise unbidden from the unconscious, those strange, sometimes terrifying, sometimes luminous visions that arrive in dreams or in sudden wordless knowing, the outer world demands that you translate them into something comprehensible, marketable, acceptable, and in this translation, much is lost. The symbol becomes explanation, the mystery becomes definition, the soul's language becomes an intellectual argument. This is why so many intuitive minds feel a kind of inner poverty. Even when they are outwardly praised, they know what has been lost in the conversion from vision to speech. But I tell you this, you must learn to walk in both languages without losing the essence. A dream does not need to be explained to be powerful. Sometimes it needs only to be lived into, to allow its energy to shape your choices, your relationships, your art, your silence. There are moments when the most faithful thing you can do to a vision is to protect it from premature exposure. Let it gestate. Let it live in you before you attempt to release it into the noisy marketplace. The modern mind thinks speed is strength, but the deep psyche knows that gestation is strength. This is especially true for the INFJ and INTJ temperament, which carries within it a natural rhythm that does not match the pace of the world. You see futures before they arrive, but the world demands that you speak only of what is already visible. You sense the trajectory of a relationship long before the other person recognizes it. But to name it too soon invites resistance, even hostility. The path, then, is not to suppress what you know, but to learn the sacred art of timing. There is a reason the ancient prophets spoke in seasons and cycles rather than in hours and minutes. They understood that truth. To be received must ripen in the listener, and yet there is another danger. Your capacity to see so far ahead can tempt you into living entirely in the realm of what might be. This is the intoxication of vision, when the mind is so enchanted by possibilities that it neglects the reality unfolding in this very hour. The psyche does not grant you foresight so that you may escape the present. It grants it so you may shape the present in alignment with the deeper pattern you perceive. It is not enough to see. You must act, and here lies one of the hardest lessons for the intuitive introvert, to bring the immensity of the inner into the limitations of the outer without despairing over the imperfection of the result. This requires a certain humility, an acceptance that the work you birth into the world will always be a shadow of the vision that inspired it. But it is in shadows that forms become visible. The archetype itself is too vast to step fully into time and space. What we create here are only partial reflections, and yet these reflections have power, for they point back to the source. A single gesture, a carefully chosen word, a moment of deep listening, these can be as world-changing as the grandest speeches, because they carry the concentrated essence of the inner world. The paradox is that while you may long to be seen and understood, the more truly you live from your depths, the more you will feel misunderstood. This is not failure. It is the natural tension of living on the boundary between the known and the unknown. The blessing they call a curse is precisely this: to be a threshold person, one who stands between worlds, with one foot in what is and one foot in what is becoming. Few will thank you for this role. Fewer still will understand it. But the soul does not measure worth by applause. It measures it by fidelity to the inner call. I have often told my students that the unconscious is like a great subterranean river flowing beneath the surface of our lives. Most never touch it. They live entirely on the dry land of conscious habit and collective belief. But you, your temperament, your vision has carved channels down into that river. You drink from it daily. And because you do, you cannot unsee the truth. It shows you. This too is part of the burden. Once you have glimpsed the deeper pattern, you cannot return to the comfort of ignorance. The bliss of not knowing is no longer available to you. Instead, you must learn the rarer bliss of living with knowledge, with all its weight, without being crushed by it. In the dreams of intuitive introverts, I often see recurring images: the hidden library, the locked garden, the mountain shrouded in mist. These are symbols of the inner life's treasure, guarded against intrusion. They also point to the task before you, to open the gates at the right moment, to invite others into that garden, to share the fruits without destroying the soil from which they grew. The danger lies in opening too soon or in never opening at all. And so I will tell you something that may feel both liberating and frightening. You are not here to be understood by the many. You are here to be indispensable to the few. The deep psyche does not scatter its seeds across barren concrete. It plants them in those who will tend them. If you measure your worth by the world's quick recognition, you will mistake your garden for a wasteland. But if you measure it by the quiet transformation you ignite in a few, you will see that the gift is working exactly as it was meant to. The world will call your gift a curse because it makes them uncomfortable. It forces them to face what they avoid: the slow unfolding of truth, the discomfort of self-confrontation, the reality that much of life cannot be controlled. But do not let that discomfort become your shame. Your mind is not a flaw to be corrected. It is an organ of perception that extends beyond the visible horizon. It is as natural as the eagle's sight or the whale's song. When you embrace this without apology, something remarkable happens. The curse they named begins to dissolve, not because the world has changed its mind, but because you have stopped needing its approval. The blessing is no longer a secret you must defend. It becomes the foundation on which you stand, and from that foundation you can begin to build something rare in this time, a life that is inwardly rooted, outwardly active, and unshaken by the misunderstandings of others. There is a moment in every intuitive introvert's life when the solitary path ceases to feel like exile and begins to feel like initiation. This moment is subtle. It rarely announces itself with trumpets. More often, it comes in the quiet hour after a disappointment, when the outer world's promises have dissolved and there is nothing left to distract you from your own depths. You feel the ache of being unseen, but instead of reaching outward for validation, you turn inward, not to escape, but to discover. And in that turning, something ancient stirs. You begin to sense that you are not alone in your solitude. There is a presence there, not of another person, but of something older, wise, patient, beyond comprehension. Call it the self, the inner guide, the divine spark, the archetype of wholeness. It does not matter. What matters is that you recognize it has been with you all along, waiting for you to stop searching for it in the faces of others. This is the first true blessing of the so-called curse. the discovery that your inner world is not empty, but inhabited in dreams. This moment often takes the form of meeting a stranger who knows your name, or of finding a house within a house, a room you have never entered before. These are not mere fictions of the sleeping mind, they are revelations of the psyche's architecture. The stranger is a part of you long denied. The hidden room is a capacity you have yet to explore, and the moment you step across that threshold, you realize that the outer world's misunderstanding of you was never the true prison. The prison was your own doubt about the value of what you carry. The INFJ often meets this initiation through the doorway of compassion. You have felt others' pain so acutely that you have mistaken it for your own, and it has weighed you down. But there comes a time when you begin to distinguish between what is yours to carry and what is not. You still feel the world suffering, but you no longer drown in it. You learn to stand as a witness, a healer, a keeper of space where transformation can happen. The INTJ meets their initiation through the doorway of vision. You have seen the long arc of patterns and the inevitability of certain outcomes. And for years, this has isolated you, for few believed you. But there comes a time when you realize your foresight is not meant to be argued, it is meant to be acted upon carefully, decisively, as a builder acts on a blueprint, even when others cannot yet see the structure. This is when the curse transforms. You no longer apologize for the way your mind works. You no longer waste your breath trying to explain the taste of water to those who have never been thirsty. Instead, you live your truth as naturally as a river flows downhill. And in doing so, you begin to attract others who recognize your current, who are nourished by it, who can meet you in the deep without fear. Yet, this is not the end of the journey, it is the beginning of a new tension. For the deeper you travel into your own psyche, the more you see that the outer world is built on the avoidance of such journeys. You will encounter resistance, not only from others, but from within yourself. There's a part of you, the shadow of the intuitive, that is tempted to retreat entirely from the outer world, to live among symbols and archetypes and never touch the earth again. It whispers that the world is too crude, too noisy, too blind to deserve your vision. And though there is truth in its complaint, there is also danger. The psyche does not give its gifts to be hoarded. If you live entirely in the inner sanctum, the water of your inner river will stagnate. Vision without expression becomes a weight, a pressure, a burden that can turn against you. The cure is not to abandon the inner life, but to create a bridge between worlds, to find ways, however small, to embody your visions in action. A poem, a conversation, a decision to live by a principle no one else understands. These are offerings to the world that also keep the inner river flowing. Here, the archetype of the messenger becomes relevant. In myth, the messenger is often a lonely figure, traveling between realms, misunderstood by both. The gods suspect them of being too human, the humans suspect them of being too close to the gods, and yet, without the messenger, the two realms drift apart entirely. You, with your intuitive mind, are such a messenger. You carry symbols from the depths into the daylight. You carry fragments of the future back to the present. You are not meant to be wholly at home in either realm. for your work depends on the tension between them. In the language of alchemy, this is the conjunctio, the sacred union of opposites. You are the vessel in which the above meets the below, the inner meets the outer, the unseen meets the seen. This is not a comfortable role. It requires you to live in a state of constant negotiation, balancing the demands of the collective with the whispers of the self. But if you can endure this tension without collapsing into one side or the other, you will find that something remarkable happens within you. A transformation that is not merely personal, but archetypal in time. You may even come to see that the world's misunderstanding is itself part of the gift. If you were understood too easily, you might be tempted to remain where you are. The resistance forces you to refine your vision, to strip away what is inessential, to find the core truth that can withstand the world's indifference. And when you offer that truth, even if only one person receives it fully, you will have done the work you came here to do. There is a dream I once heard from an intuitive introvert. They were walking through a vast library, searching for a single book. The shelves were endless, the air thick with the scent of old paper. At last they found it high on a shelf, and as they opened it, they saw that the pages were blank. At first they felt despair, years of searching and nothing written. But then they realized the book was theirs to fill. This is the task of your life, not to find the finished truth in someone else's voice, but to write the truth you have been carrying all along. In the language only, you can speak. And so, my friends, when they call your mind a curse, remember, they are speaking from the vantage point of a world that fears what it does not understand. When they call your vision arrogance, remember, they are reacting to the discomfort of being seen too clearly. And when they call your solitude a flaw, remember, they are mistaking the forge for the tomb. You are not dead to the world. You are in the process of being shaped into something the world has not yet learned to name. The moment you understand the sacred nature of your gift, the axis of your life begins to shift. You no longer move as one who is trying to fit into the grooves the world has carved. You move as one who is carving a path that did not exist before you. This is not rebellion for its own sake. It is alignment with a truth that predates the world's opinion of you. And when you walk in such alignment, the tension between blessing and curse dissolves, not because the world has softened, but because you no longer measure your worth by its categories. There will still be days when the weight of perception bears down on you, days when the noise outside is so loud that the quiet inside feels fragile, days when you question the purpose of carrying a vision that so few will see. It is in these moments that you must remember, the life of the soul is not measured in numbers, it is measured in depth. The collective mind is a river that moves toward the easiest path. Your task is to deepen it, to carve channels that lead it into richer waters. This work is slow, often invisible, and it requires a kind of faith that is not taught by the world. The faith that the seed planted in silence will bear fruit in its own season. I have seen the inner landscapes of people like you. I have seen the dreams in which you are walking alone, through forests, across deserts, along the edge of oceans. I have seen the symbols that appear to you in the in-between states. The bird that lands on your shoulder and will not speak. the door in the middle of the field that opens to a place that feels like home, though you have never been there. The figure in the crowd who looks at you as if they know you from another lifetime. These are not coincidences of the mind, they are the language of the self. Speaking to you in images that bypass the intellect, they are reminders that your path is not a mistake, that even in isolation you are accompanied by forces older than fear. And yet, this path demands courage, not the loud courage of the battlefield, but the quieter courage of staying faithful to what you know, even when it costs you comfort, status, or the illusion of belonging. The INFJ will be asked to stand firm in their compassion without letting it consume them. The INTJ will be asked to stay true to their vision without letting it harden into arrogance. Both will be asked to live in the paradox, to be both participant and observer, both immersed and detached, both in the world and not of it. When you begin to embody this paradox, something extraordinary happens. Your presence itself becomes a symbol. You no longer need to explain your vision in order for it to affect others. It is felt in the way you inhabit space, in the way you listen, in the way you refuse to be rushed into betraying the rhythm of your inner knowing. Those who are ready will recognize it. Those who are not will sense it nonetheless, even if they cannot name it. And in this way, your gift works upon the world without fanfare. The way roots work upon the earth, in silence. Do not be surprised if your life begins to attract those who are also carrying unlived gifts. They will be drawn to you, not because you speak their exact language, but because you remind them that such a language exists. You will see it in their eyes, the flicker of recognition, the sudden awareness that they, too, have been told their blessing is a curse. Your task is not to rescue them, but to live so fully in your own truth that they feel permission to live in theirs. This is how the archetype redeems itself. The seer is no longer the isolated figure on the mountain. They become the bridge between worlds, a living testament that solitude need not be loneliness, that vision need not be madness, that depth need not be exile. You become the proof that what is hidden can be brought into the light without losing its power. And once you have crossed that threshold, you will never again mistake misunderstanding for condemnation. It will appear to you for what it is, a sign that you are walking ahead of the collective, carrying a lantern they do not yet know they need. I leave you with this image: a candle in a vast cavern to the eyes of the impatient. It is a small and fragile thing, barely illuminating the stones around it, but to the eyes of one who understands darkness, it is everything. It is direction, it is warmth, it is proof that light exists at all. Your mind, your way of seeing, your gift is that candle. Protect it, feed it, carry it forward, not for the applause of the crowd, but because there are others wandering in that cavern who will find their way because you refuse to let it go out. So when they call it a curse, smile not in defiance, but in the quiet, knowing that they have named it wrong. Walk on, not to prove them wrong, but to live in such a way that the truth becomes undeniable. The blessing was never in their recognition, it was in your possession of a sight that reaches beyond the surface, in your ability to find meaning where others see only chaos, in your willingness to live by a compass they cannot read, And when the day comes that you stand at the edge of your own life and look back, you will see that every misunderstanding, every lonely night, every moment you questioned the worth of your mind was part of the same unfolding design. The path was not a mistake. The curse was never real. The blessing was always here waiting for you to claim it, to live it, to become it.